So kind of like, if you did have any takeaways, if you did listen to it, were there anything that kind of like stood out to you where you're like, that's really crucial, or maybe Trajan sees his team differently than I do?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is there's a mindset that him and JB are on the same wavelength, and I think we've known that throughout this entire season, and obviously with the success we've been able to kind of speculate that. But I think just being reiterating that they are one combined force, one unit that's going to continually build this team up is really enticing, because I mean, the past few years it does feel like there's been a lot of separation and disconnect there. So seeing a unified vision is a wonderful thing. And I think other than that, it's knowing that the players are absolutely loving what's going on here. The exit interviews all going well. And that was a big point of the conference. And you can just say, oh, yeah, these are exit interviews. What does that really mean? But I'd really question what the last few years exit interviews sounded like. What were the players saying that, or what were the coaches and the management able to tell Cade Cunningham and say, it's going to be better? I know we lost 28 straight. We won 14 games, but we're on the up and up. When you know, as Cade Cunningham, that you're not going to be seeing those guys in a few months because they are probably going to be out of town. But now Cade can go into this and have continuity and talk with them. Okay, this is the game plan for next season, because you know that there's going to be that continuity. And I think that's the biggest thing that's going to lead to a great culture in Detroit, that's going to lead people here, is the players know what to expect. And I think that's the biggest thing for me, at least.
Sean, we were kind of talking about like main takeaways with
Mhm.
Trajan Langdon's press conference. What kind of, how do I word this? When you watched it, was there a certain part of his press conference that like really stood out to you, that like really just struck home, where maybe some fans missed it?
Yeah, I mean, to me, like I just, for one, I love I love the transparency of Trajan Langdon. I think he does a great job of tipping his hand without showing his cards. Where he, like, just hearing about his time in San Antonio and how much he learned about the value of continuity, and hearing about just him talk about things like the draft and free agency, and just how refreshingly transparent he is, and lets you know like exactly kind of like where his mindset is going in, like with the draft, for example. Like I just, like him like acknowledging and talking about how with NIL it's a lot harder to find like good talent deep in the draft, just because, I mean, let's be honest, if guys have the opportunity to be a second round pick or go make $5 million to play somewhere next season to better their draft value, they're going to take the $5 million, right?
Mhm.
On top of that, like just hearing the way that he talked about like even like free agency, and talking about how it takes two to tango, and he would certainly love to have guys back, but understands just what it take, like what's important of going into that. Like the thing that like just really stood out to me is just how like I think before, like you said, it's like it's kind of hard to take in like really take at face value what we got in some of those years past press conferences, because at certain points like, all right, but how are we gonna flip this? Like what's the plan here? And I think the thing about Trajan is it is so clear when you hear him talk that he is so thorough and system oriented and has all the scenarios mapped out in his head and in his mind. And so as far as like what happens for like this off season, I think the like just again just going off of what he said, I think he leans towards continuity and like building the culture. And but like at the same time, like I think the thing that's great about Trajan is he's always been like upfront about like how about his plans can change, about how his mindset can evolve. And I think like those are what the great executives do. They're good at reading the tea leaves while sticking to their principles. And I think the more that Trajan will have time to be in this seat and to to help mold this team in his image, I think only the better it will be. And I just keep going back to the fact that last year, after his introductory press conference, just like I just remember the confidence that people I talked to there just really displayed about Trajan. Like that was not fake. Like they were blown away by Trajan from the second they started talking to him. And quite frankly, just the more I hear him talk and the more I see him work, I think it's easy to see why.
Yeah, the one thing that I was laughing at was a lot of the media kept asking him, when is it time to make a big move? When is it time to address a certain position? And
I mean, the people from 97.1. I mean, what?
I'm cool with some people at 97.1.
I'm just saying it's important to note which reporters asked those questions.
Yeah, Sean, I think it was you.
Yeah. Got me. Yep.
Yeah.
It's funny because like you can tell he was like media trained really well, like, you know, worked in the Spurs organization under R.C. Buford, who was an amazing front office executive. Like Trajan's patience, I think, is something that the Pistons really haven't had in quite some time in an organization and in a front office. Like he has a vision and he knows that what they did this season, he didn't even see it coming. He thought they would be improved, but he didn't know that they were going to lose their first round pick this year. He'd be the first to tell you, he's like, I really didn't see this coming. And I think it's important to note that like patience is okay when you were the laughing stock of the NBA this season and teams are respecting you more. You're getting more respect across the national media. My main takeaway with him is patience. If there's a move to be made, he'll make it. He's not going to mortgage the future just because there's a shiny available superstar or maybe a disgruntled star. I think he just wants to develop in-house because you see teams across the NBA that have developed in-house and they're making the playoffs every year, giving themselves a chance to, you know, win an NBA championship. Obviously, there are some teams that are built through trades. I think the Knicks and the Pacers are prime examples of that, but they had first round draft capital and cap space to play with. I think there are different avenues to, you know, make the playoffs and win a championship, but I think Trajan's method of thinking is the right one, and you could have long-term sustainable success without kind of, you know, blowing it up and, you know, just being in cap space hell.
Yeah. And especially when, like you said, when you have the luxury of patience that you get to, you know, like when you have the equity with the fan base, when they are bought in to what you're doing, into the people that you have in house, like you're allowed to let that play out and to see where it goes. And honestly, like the biggest blessing for a Trajan or whoever's in charge of this front office going forward is that, like, God forbid, but let's say this ever needs to be blown up, they're going to start with a heck of a lot more of a haul than they did when they traded Andre Drummond.